marksmen, and a lot of the BM parses you see are by players who are messing around or don't know any better, and so it skews the data really badly. But when you actually sit down and try to do the highest possible DPS you can do as BM, it's really not that bad. And for a lot of players, their individual skill will have a bigger effect on the damage they're doing than what spec or talent they choose.
All right, thank you.
All right, I have a lore question. At the end of Cataclysm with the goblins, Gallywix gets put in charge, and it seems really far-fetched because he's this bad guy the whole way through. And then what happens to him after you get to Azeroth? You see his head on the side of a mountain, but you never see him again. Also, Blinding Shield for Palace. What happened to that?
Why don't you take both of those, Chris?
Be useful, Chris. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We all love you, Chris.
Thank you. Gallywix, we haven't had a conversation about Gallywix in a while. So I don't know if there's any core plans for him right now. He really served us well in terms of the Goblin experience. But I think he's super interesting, and I do think he's a bastard, and that is what makes him interesting. So I don't know. We'll definitely be jamming on it. But since that content was developed, we haven't had a tremendous amount of discussion about him. Most of our discussion these days is trying to kind of buff up some Pandaren characters and try and make them interesting too. So I don't know. We'll be thinking about Gallywix and what to do with him.
On Blinding Shield, repeat after me, nothing is set in stone. Things can change. GC did not promise me a pony. But it is currently penciled in as the new Paladin level 87 ability. Thank you so much.
I think we promised him a moose.
I have 2 questions for you, please. You sound like a chipmunk. My first question is about the Shaman new talent points that you have coming up. A lot of them seem to be geared towards Resto and not really to a damage point. I know you said that you wanted hybridization to become more into play, but what's wrong with the classes that want to be more of the damage role and not go into the healing?
If you look at several of those talents, there are options to do damage. The one that clones your spell, for example, is a great, you do a lightning bolt and it procs and now you get a second lightning bolt. So there definitely will be ways to increase your DPS. What we didn't want with this new talent system was for, say, an enhancement shaman to just go down there and say, okay, melee DPS, melee DPS, melee DPS, I'm done. Because then you're back to a cookie cutter build, which is the whole thing we're trying to avoid. And in the case of the shaman, because there is a healing spec as well, and because they are a hybrid, we wanted to have some healing tiers. But then we also have some tiers that are based around totems, or some tiers that are based around movement or utility.
But you also said that you wanted to get away from the talents, the totems in yesterday. Why would you create all these talents based on totems if you were going to take them away?
No, we love totems. We think totems are what is so cool about being a shaman. What we don't think are interesting is dropping a totem to get like Strength of Earth or something like that, the ones that are just passive buffs. All of the utility totems and the totems that do damage we think are interesting, and we think shaman can have fun choosing which one of those to drop down.
Thank you, though.
Hi. Hello. My name is Bob, and your question is kind of similar to mine, except with Paladins. According to the lore behind Warcraft, each Paladin has a Libram, and you guys are going to get rid of relics. Is it somehow possible in the future you could add an animation to the Librams,
When you say animation, do you mean actually make it visible on the character?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier, like doing, hits on every class that's specific to that class. So yes, and also for hunters, we're going to do ammo pouches and, quivers and obviously other things for other classes as well.
So it is possible.
Yeah, and I think Greg can probably go into detail about how that's actually going to work with design. That's just from the visible angle, but taking away relics as a mechanic doesn't necessarily mean that we're not interested in following through on the visual side of things, and they have plans for how to deal with that, obviously, on the design side as well. I don't know if you want to talk to them.
Yeah, totally. I don't think I could put any better than that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice hammer.
Thank you, War Chief. You're
welcome.
I'm Rationalist from Bloodbath Beyond of Lane. Hey, guys. Sort of gameplay lore question. In the upcoming 4.3 End of Time, we get to kill, how do you pronounce it, Mormazoid, or the Evil Nosdomo?
Murazond.
Thank you. In a 5-man, but Deathwing and Malagos required a 10-25-man. And I was wondering if this is actually the last we'll see of the Infinite, because I want to kill them epically and properly in their own raid. And also, player housing, please.
Well, for the housing, I've got the standard answer, which is it's something that we would love to do someday. It's something that we talk about all the time. We have a general idea of ways that we would do it, but they are incredibly time and resource consuming. So as long as you guys still want more dungeons and raids and character classes and all that kind of stuff, it makes it very difficult to do both of those at the same time. But still holding on to that dream that someday we'll be able to make it happen.
And I would say, relative to the Infinite Dragonblight question, the component of it that is Nosdormu's story, definitely, let me think about this before I roll this out. It definitely wraps fairly cleanly, but I think the Infinite Dragonblight concept is very cool and very useful for the world. The time ways while all these exist. It's nice to have some bad guys in there. We don't have any current plans post, 4.3 for the Infinite Dragonblight, but I think it's an idea that could and should be leveraged forward, indefinitely, provided it's cleverly done.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm from Emerald Dream. I have a profession about crafting. For jewel crafting, endgame, it feels a little bland. Is there a possibility that in the future you would add something like trinkets, rings, or neck pieces that you could craft, like blacksmithing and leatherworking, raid drops recipes?
Yeah, we could certainly add more trinkets or something like that at the end. It's always a challenge for us to decide when is the right time to add the add the new recipes. It's not something we do every single tier. And when we do, is there equality among all the different crafting professions, or are people going to feel like, oh, now I have to go switch and become a jewel crafter because that's the only way to get these great trinkets, and there's nothing equivalent to that anywhere else?
I just want to add, maybe there would be a BOE so everyone could use them.
Even if they're BOE, that's, I'm assuming you are expecting something out of it as a jewel crafter, like gold or something like that. So it's still kind of giving something to one of the professions that the other professions aren't getting. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask a art-related question about Pandaren once they, I'm pretty sure we understand how you choose Alliance or Horde, and then once you're beyond level 10, and say especially with stealth characters, how is there a way, or do you guys have any ideas of distinguishing between Alliance and Horde Pandaren beyond level 10 at least?
Mostly your UI will tell you. We've experienced this in places like the arenas where you can fight against the exact same race that you're playing. And we found that really the players don't depend entirely on what model it is to know it's Alliance or Horde. More than anything else, to know it's your enemy, it's that red name above his head and the red circle when you target him, and when you mouse over it, the red text in the tooltip, all that kind of stuff. So primarily it's the UI. And we may end up doing some things to help the UI kind of more clearly distinguish an enemy Pandaren. But I think that's probably the approach we'll take. We don't plan to take the approach of making them look different somehow.
Yeah, I think, as far as the visual side goes, we explored ideas like, maybe the Horde pandas look a little bit more feral and wild or something like that. You get into that realm of, and the risk there is that one side no longer looks like the classic Pandaren, like the image that we've always, wanted to put out there as this is what a Pandaren is. And I think that's why the idea of them being able to choose at some point works so well with that very classic identity, is that we're not necessarily branching off at any point and saying, Horde pandas don't get to look like that anymore. We just really didn't want to go down that path.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hey guys, the dungeon system with the leaderboards and the normalizing of gear, it looks really awesome, and I really hope you continue your work on that. It's going to take a lot of tweaking, but if the feedback is good and everything works well, do you potentially see that translated into raid and maybe tracking how many times a guild is wiping on a boss versus how many times they're actually killing it?
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. I definitely think there's a lot more that we could do to track player accomplishments and to maintain them historically, all that sort of thing. So I could imagine it extending to raids in the future somehow.
Great. Thank you very much.
Hello.
My question was about there's lots of people wanting the reskinning of all of the old races. I was over at the art panel for the Pandaren, and they just looked so amazing. It re-invoked the desire. I was wondering not only about the reskinning, but they were talking about being about 10 different bone structures in the face alone. I was wondering if that was also something they were looking at reskinning for the old races, so they are at par with the Pandaren.
Yeah, totally. I'm right there with you. I think we all are. When we look at the game, we all look at the current player races and just feel like, it's the one thing that we really want to see brought up to the level of everything else. The facial bone structure stuff you're talking about is approximately, currently in the Pandaren model, there's approximately 10 times the number of the bones that we have in the older player race models. And that's something that you saw with Thrall too, if you've seen any of the cutscenes or anything, and there's so much emotion that we're able to achieve with that. And with the pandas, that when we rework, and we really want to and we're going to, no idea when that's going to happen. We currently, I'm literally personally working on some of that right now with some of the character artists. And I think we have a pretty good plan on how to roll that out, but there are challenges that come with that, like if I don't like that, so one day we don't want to just come out and say, everybody in the world looks new, and then we have 20% of our player base who are outside of Blizzard ready to stab me in the back and kick me while I'm on the ground because I ruined their lives, So we want to do it right, and we want to make sure that the way that we do it is in respect to what people have grown to know and love. So yes, that's the plan. We want to do that. It's in the works, and it will be at the fidelity of what we're seeing with the current Pandaren and other player and NPC models.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, I think this is going to be our last one.
All right, I'm Galan from Cenarian Circle. I've really enjoyed watching the items that you get from raids evolving in their art, in their texture, and in their glow effects. And I was kind of wondering what the new theme for Pandaren raids was going to be, like bamboo and wood or something.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that initially comes to mind is the whole brewing thing, we really want to make sure that we maintain that part of their culture, and I think that's a really cool kit that we can use moving forward in, the 85 to 90 stuff that you're going to see in the higher-end dungeons and raids. Obviously, bamboo, obviously the things that you're seeing if you play the demo here, but we really want to make it feel like all that stuff is crafted as part of their initial culture. So it's relevant to what you're seeing currently, and then maybe spinning off into that kind of brewing, Pandaren brew world a little bit more.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Everybody give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, BlizzCon.
Thank you.
Thank you for attending the World of Warcraft General Q&A panel. Up next, StarCraft 2 Finals beginning at 4 o'clock.